I see. Okay, that looks good. Really. Tools are part of our everyday lives. We're so used to them, we forget how dangerous they can be. Hi, welcome to CopperPoint Mutual's Focus on Safety. I'm your host, Greg Fernandez. In this series, we bring you information so you go home from work safe every day. Today, we're going to talk about the safe use of hand and power tools. This is Randy Delgado, and he'll be helping us with some much needed information and demonstrations as well. Thank you very much for helping us out today. Some of the hazards associated with hand and power tools are cutting, smashing, amputating, or breaking a body part. Even losing a toe or a finger can be a real problem. Imagine losing something bigger. Things flying around that can scratch you, impale you, make you sick, or kill you. Dust, debris, fumes, vapors, gases, saw blades, drill bits. Electricity, braid or cut cords, tools that are a higher amp than the circuit, cords that are trip hazards. A working area that's wet, dirty, slippery, or not well lit. Conditions of the tools, are they broken or dirty? Using the wrong tool for the job. Using a tool the wrong way. Imagine cutting a little piece of wood with a chainsaw. The chainsaw is much heavier. It'll keep right on going into whatever's in the way. Not watching what you're doing, especially putting your hands in the wrong spot. The most common way people get injured is they get distracted while they're using a tool. Let's talk about these in depth and how you can prevent injuries when using hand and power tools. First, let's start with hand tools. You need to choose the right tool for the job. A screwdriver is a screwdriver. Randy, what do people do wrong with screwdrivers?
Well, they try to use this as a hammer, chisel, or scissors.
Check the handle on the tool. If the handle's broken or splintered, or if the seal on a metal hammer is cracked, the head can fly off and hit you or someone else. In the movies, you'd get a knock on the head and a laugh track, but in real life, you could lose an eye or worse. Check the tool itself. Make sure wrench jaws aren't sprung and pliers are tight. Impact tools like chisels and hammers need to be fixed firmly to the handle. And if their heads are mushroomed, they're old and can shatter. Make sure your tools are clean and dry too, so they don't slip while you're using them. Watch out for oil and grease especially. Saws can cut more than wood, so make sure you choose the right saw. If it's too big, it can slip off what you're cutting. If it's too small, it'll stick to your materials. Make sure the handles are tightly fixed to the blades, then check the blade. It should be clean and intact, no cracks, and the teeth shouldn't be bent. Saws and knives should be sharp. Dull ones cause injuries because they stick into whatever you're cutting. Before you begin to saw, you want to make sure that you secure your material on a firm surface, not your body. When you're sawing, saw away from your body and be sure no one's standing near you. If your blade gets stuck, don't yank it. The force can cause the blade to come at you and hurt you. So Randy, tell me what other safety concerns we need to think about when we're using iron and steel hand tools.
Well, you got to keep in mind, Greg, you've got two metals that do come in contact with each other. There will be a spark created between the two. Like this nail and this hammer, you don't hit this nail correctly, you will create a spark. Another good example is this striker, which consists of two metals rubbing against each other, and you will see the kind of spark that's created.
So if we're using something like that in an area where we're working around flammable materials, we should probably be pretty concerned about that.
That's correct, Greg.
Great information. Thanks. Make sure that your work area is clear and that it's well lit enough for you to work safely. Finally, pay attention to what you're doing. Getting distracted is a leading cause of injuries. Now, Randy, what do you say we plug in and talk about power tools?
Let's do it.
Let's be honest, what makes them fun is the power, but it's also what makes them very dangerous. Even a small electric shock can give you a heart attack. Make sure cords aren't frayed or cut, that they're not near anything flammable or sharp, and especially keep them and you away from water. Check that their plugs have 3 prongs, or if you're using an adapter, make sure it's properly grounded. Also, make sure the outlets are rated properly for the tool. If you don't know, ask an electrician. Before you clean or repair power tools, or before you change any attachments, unplug them. There are some major issues to watch out for with tabletop power tools. Materials and parts can turn into projectiles. For example, on this drill bit, if the bit is bent, it can snap off and go flying. Make sure the blade is not set to reverse. If it's in reverse, the materials can get flung back at you. Keep your power tools sharp, clean, and in good condition. Some power tools require lubrication, so check your manufacturer's instructions on that. It's very important that you choose the right tool. Make sure that your saw blade, grinding wheel, and drill bit are the right size for your materials. Some portable and tabletop power tools have parts that need to be locked tightly into place. On this bandsaw, for example, if the blade is loose, it can catch your material and fling it right back at you. Randy, how do I check to make sure that the blade isn't loose?
Well, Greg, first thing that you'd want to do is make sure the tool is unplugged. Come here, open this cover, and you can visually check to see the tension of the blade is correct.
I'd like to talk about machine guards if you have a minute.
Sure.
We talk about that?
You sure can.
We can't overestimate the importance of machine guards. They're there to help keep you from being exposed to the most dangerous parts of power tools, like a moving saw blade. Randy, I see that on this table saw, there is no machine guard.
You are correct. What we did is we intentionally took off the blade cover to illustrate how unsafe this particular tool would be to use without the blade guard on it.
I can certainly see how someone could be very vulnerable to injury without that machine guard. Now, this one does have a machine guard. What exactly is the importance of having a machine guard?
Well, this particular tool, it does have a machine guard, and it would protect you, your fingers, keeping them away from the blade, and also the material that is being cut from it being flung in the direction of where you're standing.
Okay, so that's also extremely important to have to be safe. So make sure before you use any power tool that you check to make sure that the machine guard is in place and in good condition. Never take guards off when you're using a power tool, and make sure they're on tightly and correctly before you start using the tool. Different tools have different kinds of guards, so learn how the guards for your tools operate. Another important part of using power and some hand tools is wearing the right clothing. What you should not wear are loose clothes and long jewelry. But what you should wear is personal protective equipment, or PPE. To be safe at a job site, you need to wear standard PPE, like safety shoes or work boots and a hard hat. Some tasks with hand or power tools will also require gloves, a mask, a respirator, or body protection, like leather aprons for welders.
What I have here is your safety glass, which should be used when you're using most power tools and some hand tools.
Okay.
Or else, for more protection, you can go to your goggle. The goggle forms a seal around your face and your eyes, eliminates any object or dust from getting into your eyes.
Okay.
Or you can go to your darker shield. Your darker shield is used if you're grinding or cutting type of metal.
Okay, so bright lights. This will help protect me from a bright light, right?
That is correct.
Does it also protect my eyes as much as this would protect the eyes, the surrounding area of my eyes?
It sure does. It sure does.
Right. What is this one?
Then you could come down to your face shield. The full face shield protects the full face and partial neck. It can be used if you're dispensing chemicals or also if you're grinding.
Okay.
Then you want to come to your welder's mask. Very important. It protects you from the high arc that the welder does emit. Very, very important.
A welder really has no choice. They have to wear this to protect their eyes.
That is correct. That is
Okay.
correct. Then you can go to your hearing protection. Your hearing protection would be your light hearing protection, which would be your sponge earplug, and that is used to protect you from low noise level.
Okay.
If you have the higher noise level, you'd want to go to your earmuff. For instance, if you're using a jackhammer.
Oh, okay. So this actually protects the entire outer ear. Big difference. Okay, that blocks up a lot of noise.
It sure does.
Thanks again, Randy, for all that great information. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Greg.
Now, let's talk about using power tools. The main reason people get hurt is they get distracted or they don't use the tool properly. Don't push start until you're actually ready to begin. On this Sawzall, imagine if you push start and the blade wasn't in all the way. When you're sawing, make sure that your material is secured with a vise or some other type of grip, not your hand. Sawing should be done when you're on the ground, not when you're on an unstable surface like a rooftop. Here's what some people will do. They'll use their leg as a balance to saw, and they'll miss the wood. You can imagine what happens. You need to watch where your hands are when you're holding or guiding your materials. If you put your hand in the wrong spot, you might lose it. Watch your fingers. One of the most common injuries is fingers getting cut off. On this table grinder, be sure the guard is down and you're wearing eye protection. If your material is too thin, it can break off and shoot back out at you. And you can get your fingers caught if you're not careful. OSHA regulations say you must keep work rests not more than 1/8 of an inch away from the grinding wheel surface. If the gap's any bigger, it can cause your material to wedge up in the gap, causing an injury and can break the wheel. Don't adjust the wheel while it's moving. The thing that makes nail guns so useful is that they fire nails extremely fast and many times, but it's also what makes them very dangerous. The Center for Disease Control says that over 30,000 people a year are admitted to the ER for nail gun injuries. A nail gun acts like an automatic weapon, so it needs to be treated with the same safety care you'd treat a firearm. A nail gun will fire when you press the muzzle up against the material and pull the trigger. Here are some tips to help you use nail guns safely. Make sure you're standing on a stable, even surface. If you lose your balance while firing a nail gun, you could accidentally fire off more than one nail. The extra nails could shoot into the air, hurting someone else, or bounce off your materials and hit you. Nail guns have two kinds of triggers, a contact trip and a sequential trip. For the contact trip, the trigger and muzzle both have to be pushed down at the same time for the nail to come out. A sequential trip trigger, which is safer, requires the muzzle to be pushed down before the trigger. You need to know which type of trigger you're using and use the right one for the job you're doing. Using the right technique can keep you from getting a nail gun injury. Do not ever keep the trigger pushed in. Go one nail at a time. Be sure that both the top and bottom parts you're nailing together can withstand the force of the nail gun. Sometimes the bottom part will shatter under that force and send a nail shooting out sideways, or the nail may not go where you want it to. Nails have been known to do a U-turn. Think about where the gun is and where your body is. Hold your hand as far from the muzzle as possible while keeping your material secure. Let's say you're nailing two studs together and you miss the second stud. If your hand's in the way, the nail goes into you, not the wood. Watch out that your feet aren't in the path of the nail. Most nail gun injuries are to the hands and feet. As with sawing, your body is not a workbench or sawhorse. Don't balance things on your body and use a nail gun at the same time. Don't use rusty nails. Not only can they damage the gun, the force can send rust back at you, which can get into your eyes. Speaking of your eyes, be sure you're wearing the proper eye protection. Make sure you also protect your ears by using hearing protection. Some nail guns are so powerful they require you to have certification before you use them. Using them without proper training can be deadly. There are powder-actuated nail guns for concrete that are as powerful as a .22. You must get proper training and certification before you can use them. Never use them near an open flame. Leave them lying around or let anyone not certified use them. And people who have used such a powerful gun for something weaker than concrete have wound up in the emergency room. A nail gun is not a toy. Never point it at yourself or anyone else. Make sure that the safety is on. The safety requires you to press the muzzle against the material and then pull the trigger, one nail at a time. Don't ever tamper with the safety. Waving around a free-firing nail gun is like waving around a free-firing pistol. The main reasons people get hurt using hand and power tools are they're not paying attention, they don't operate them properly, the tool is broken, or there are hazards in the work area. Keeping safe is as easy as watching what you're doing, learning to operate tools correctly, including when you clean them, and making sure they're intact. Then, checking that the area around you is safe. Randy, I'd like to thank you once again for all of the excellent information that you were able to share with us today and the demonstrations you did.
You're welcome.
Now, I heard that you have a saying on workplace safety.
Actually, Greg, I do. Come in with 10, go home with 10.
Well, I guess it's worked for you for 26 years.
It sure has.
And it can work for you too. You use tools every day, but don't take them for granted. I'm Greg Fernandez. Thanks for watching Focus on Safety. Thanks, Randy. For printed safety materials, go to CopperPoint.com.